Hello and welcome into the KE Report. I'm your host, Shad Markwitz, and today we're getting an update on Scottie Resources. Scottie Resources is traded on the TSX.V under the ticker SCOT and on the OTCQB under the ticker SCTSF. And we're joined today with the Vice President of Exploration for Scottie Resources, Thomas Mumford. And Thomas, it's great to get you on the show. This is your first time on the KE Report, but we talk about you all the time being so crucial to the exploration plans for the company. But this one's going to be a little different in that we're going to be reviewing some news that you put out to the marketplace on April 1st. And it's talking about the positive results you've had from your ore sorting initiatives. And then we're also going to get into the potential for the direct shipping ore project. So a lot to get into in this one. Just from the onset, though, Thomas, I just want to mention that when a lot of people hear ore sorting, they think of how many companies have flagged this topic in the past, and I think everybody understands that the idea here is to upgrade the ore so that you have less waste and you can actually have a higher concentration of mineralized content in the ore that makes it through. So, with that backdrop, a little skepticism from the marketplace on ore sorting in general, but the concept itself makes a lot of sense. Walk us through why you think ore sorting would be a good fit here and some of the results you've had from some of this testing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you having me on here to speak about this. So, yeah, this morning we put out new news. We put out our first results from our ore sorting study, our phase one, and then we announced that we're really pursuing this DSO project. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of studies going on right now. The technology with ore sorting has really advanced. There's multiple sensors. You can apply multiple sensors to the same ore sorting system. And a lot of people are using it to upgrade their products in order to ship it out or reduce the amount of waste doing it. With us pursuing a DSO model, which is a direct ship ore model, ore sorting becomes fundamental to it. And luckily, the nature of our deposit, like the mineralogy of it, is very amenable to ore sorting. So it really backstops what we have and shows that this is going to be a possibility for us. Scottie's blessed with the fact that we're 40 kilometers along a road from a deep water shipping port, one of the closest mines in the entire world that has that access to a deep water shipping port. And this study kind of reaffirms that we do have the ability to upgrade our ore and reduce the amount of waste that we're shipping, which are both very crucial components to a DSO model. Where you're shipping a product, you want to ship the least amount of material as you can. The higher grade you can ship, the higher payables you can return from that grade.
Well, and to the point of the direct ship ore business, it makes sense to have it upgraded first before you ship it so you're shipping less waste and more concentrated mineralization to ship overseas. But I think some people may be surprised because where Scottie is located in the Golden Triangle, there are two active mills near you that you could, and you already have tested your ore through, and it had favorable recoveries at the Brucejack mine operated. A lot of people remember that from Pretium, now operated by Newmont, but also at the SCOT mill, which has had some challenges getting started up, but you've run the ore through there regardless, and it works in both cases. But Brad has made the point on our show before that, hey, you've got options. And because you have that deep water port nearby, you could ship these over to Asian precious metal smelters and they could deliver back a concentrate to you. So maybe speak about the rationale to pursue this line of thinking of the direct shipping ore model.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We do have optionality in the area from where our rocks can get processed. And I mean, if we can get them seaborne, then there's just a myriad of different options of where this could go in terms of smelters. Us having that optionality, but being able to show that we can do this as a standalone endeavor really puts a floor to the price that we can receive when we look at those other options and see where we fit into the context of the other operations in the area. So by doing a DSO model, basically we can be standalone. We don't need a mill. We don't need a tailings facility. We just need to be able to process and pre-concentrate the ore with the ore sorting at site, and then we ship it off to Asian smelters. And that'll set a floor for the value that we have. Once we are able to release our resource and also put an economic study around this, we'll set a floor on, this is what we are worth. This is how we are able to advance this project. And that's kind of a talking point to anybody engaging with us in the local area.
Yeah, I think it's a very smart strategy, Thomas, because it basically says, hey, we can do this on our own. We don't need you or your mill. But if you want to give us better terms, then let's talk. So it gives you some negotiating chips there at the table. And it's also interesting just to see that it could be a really viable way to just get gold coming back into the company. Now, while I've got you on the line, There's a lot of times we reference you, Thomas, on other calls because I want to dig into the exploration news. And sometimes Brad will say, that's a great question for Thomas. So while you're here, while I've got you, I think it's important as the Vice President of Exploration to maybe just give people your take on all of the exploration work the team has done over the years, but in specific last year, 2024's drill program. We've covered those results. Now I think we finished all the results as they've come back in and unpack them. What key takeaways would you share with investors listening in as someone that's a boots on the ground in charge of all the exploration?
Yeah, I think we've been, remarkably consistent with hitting our targets over the last number of years. We're going to be putting out our maiden resource here in the coming weeks, which will underscore that. And really, this exploration program that we just had in 2024, the biggest objective was confirming zones from the historic parts of the Scottie Gold Mine and filling any gaps in and around Blueberry to ensure that we could put out this resource. In addition to that, we had a number of new exploration targets. We had both expansion area around existing zones as well as some other new zones that we were testing. I think the most exciting discovery that we made this past year was what we called the Wolf Zone, which is to the south of the Scottie Gold Mine. We basically turned the drill and pushed it further to the south than it had ever been drilled. Basically, we've been always drilling north to south at Scottie, and we went from south to north this time, trying to hit a deeper target on Scottie. And en route to that target, we hit this new zone called the Wolf Zone. We've seen an expression of it at surface, but never hit anything at drilling. And essentially, it was 5 meters of 6 grams. It was in a nice periodicity from other zones that we have at Scottie, and it'll be a definite exploration target that we follow up next year. We left the pad up, so it'll be one of the earliest drill holes that we're able to put into the ground, just because it should be ready to go as soon as we get on the ground this season.
Yeah, that was an exciting new discovery. And I even think just rotating back to the Scottie Gold Mine area and putting in a lot of holes there in this program reminded people that you have more than just Blueberry. Obviously, Blueberry is very cheap to drill. It's right off the road, and there's a lot of action there. And a lot of the work in the prior couple of years has been at Blueberry, and rightly so. And you still did put holes into the Blueberry contact zone in this program. But I think just reminding people that, hey, the Scottie Gold Mine, is not a throwaway project over here. There's a lot of action here too. And we talked a little bit about some of the different zones there, but that new Wolf Zone discovery on track. Then you still had some holes in the C and D zone. Now, not
Mm-hmm.
all of those areas will all make it into this resource. So maybe distinguish at Blueberry, at Scottie, at some of these other areas, what parts are going to make it into this resource and what parts are maybe going to be saved for future updates.
Yeah, so we've got the Scottie Gold Mine underground going into the resource. We've got Blueberry, we're going to put an open pit, and then we're going to do an underground at Blueberry as well. The Bend vein makes it into this resource. What doesn't make it into it will be C and D zone won't make it into this resource. Nothing from Domino. That's really where the cutoff, and that's the operational growth over the next few years, exploring and expanding those zones to make sure that they do fit into eventual iterations of the resource. I mean, we're happy to put out our first resource, but we also recognize that we're an under-drilled deposit, that we've got a lot of expansion potential still available to us. And so getting on the ground and continuing to expand is going to be really part of our business model. The beauty of the DSO model is that, we can be standalone at a very low threshold. It's a low capital endeavor to get started. It'll be cash generating, and we continue the exploration that we see the potential on the property.
Well, and when we look at something like just Blueberry or the Scottie Gold Mine, there was a lot of individual veins we talked about. Honestly, it got to the point where there were so many veins. He said, "Well, we're just doing clusters of veins now because there's so many different
Yeah.
veins the team has found." Are there any veins that didn't make it into the resource at Blueberry or at Scottie?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's some veins that are just not at the scale of to be drilled yet to make it in, and that'll be, an obvious exploration target. Ideally, when we drill, we're able to hit multiple targets, and because these veins are so stacked that we can really leverage that with future drill programs. And we know where we want to add, but we don't want to just drill one hole just for one intercept. So we'll often tweak it so that we get a little bit more information out of each drill hole. And so we see an obvious progression on the resource as we continue to do both infill and expansion drilling.
Well, then obviously this next key milestone being the resource, there is a plan after that to even wrap some economics around the project. In the midst of all that, is there going to be another initiative for more drilling in 2025? And could you maybe share the rough thinking now, because I know you haven't announced it yet, just the rough thinking of what areas will be priorities for 2025 drilling?
Yeah, I mean, we're still working through that to some degree. Yeah, we want to put out the resource, and then we would like to follow it up with a DSO type PEA before the year end. with that in mind, one of the objectives of this next season would be upgrading the resource that we put out, which will largely be inferred, to an indicated status. And then with that, coupling with that would be exploration on other drill targets in the area, things like the Wolf Zone, C and D Zone, maybe even get over the hill and go back to Domino.
So you'll be doing some infill drilling to jump categories, get them from inferred up to measured and indicated, which will help with the continuity of the deposit and higher confidence ounces, but then also still testing the envelope with some exploration targets. So a nice mix there. Well, I guess that's going to be the key news on tap for the company. Thomas, sometime we'll get you back on and we may just do a deep dive into last year's program and show people visually, all these different targets that we go over on the audio calls here with a video call. But I really appreciate you coming on and breaking down the ore sorting, the plan with the direct shipping ore model, the optionality that gives you. And that doesn't close off the idea that you could still process it there in the Golden Triangle. But it definitely, as you start building towards this PEA on the DSO model, I think it'll give people a baseline of what the economics look like on this particular option. And I guess just anything else that you want to say that you think distinguishes Scottie Resources from other companies that are exploration companies that are earlier stage, but you guys actually have a path forward here to development. Anything else you want to say that you think distinguishes the company?
Yeah, I think our infrastructure, and that includes our mine permit, really set us apart. Like we're road accessible. There's a power line that goes within a kilometer of our property boundary, right up adjacent to our Scottie Gold Mine. We've got a much shorter pathway to production than almost any other junior in the area that is at a similar stage to us. So I think that's a huge advantage, and that's something that we're going to try to leverage with this DSO model. Just because the reduction in capital and engineering that's required to get us up and operating, I think that's what's going to set Scottie apart. And with the gold price doing what it's doing, we just become so much more attractive. The other thing is that any step towards a DSO model, which is basically mining and shipping, will work in conjunction with any of these other options in the area. It doesn't close off any of the doors for us. It's just keeps us on that pathway towards optionality.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of summarizing it, Thomas, that you have the option to ship some of the ore, but you still have the option to process some there locally. You could do a mix. You could do all the above. You could build your own mill. So there's all kinds of different options the company has. But in this kind of a $3,000 plus gold environment, even more than that in Canada, more like $4,400 gold environment in Canada, it gives any company some options. But the nice thing is the infrastructure you have in place and the permitting that you have done, it gives you a big leg up on a lot of other companies. And so for those listening in, if you want to follow along with all the news flow coming out of Scottie Resources, definitely click on the link below this interview in the show notes. It takes you right over to the company website, straight to their news section. Thomas, thanks so much for coming on the KE Report. And as always, looking forward to our next conversation.
Thank you very much.